It's been quite a challenging year, of course. As we know, Africa is hugely reliant on refined product imports. So, and we've seen a period where refining has done well. The refining system has been stretched. That's been good news for refiners, but not necessarily for consumers, because it's led to higher prices due to the fundamentals being much tighter than usual. I think that's something that we expect to continue going forward until we really have new refining capacity coming online in the Atlantic Basin. And there's a lot of focus, of course, on the Dangote refinery in Nigeria.
When you look at some of the, I suppose, call it, dynamics playing out here, you're seeing that product demand across the region is increasing. Is that supply also coming into the space? What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're seeing a very buoyant demand scenario, and I think looking forward, our expectations are that demographic growth, economic growth, even the increase in mining activity to find the metals and minerals that we need for the energy transition, all of that is stimulating demand. But a lot of that demand is going to be met from imports. We've actually seen, even though the demand situation has been improving, the outlook for demand is positive, not just for the near term, but for the long term. The story on the continent has been, unfortunately, one of more refinery closures than refineries opening up. And as a result, we've seen increased product imports. A lot of that product is coming from outside of the region, of course, from the Middle East, from Europe, from Asia. And our expectation is that those flows into the region are set to increase going forward.
We were talking about how that demand is growing rapidly. What are you seeing from an investment side of things? I mean, is new refining capacity coming through, or is that limited?
I think it's quite limited. I mean, we were participating at ADA this week in Cape Town, fantastic event. And I think what we heard was that there's enormous need for investment across the continent, across the supply chain, from refining to infrastructure, really taking those molecules from all the way down to the consumer. And I think all the stakeholders were in agreement that there was need for that investment, that they were eager to make that investment. But financing those projects has been a bit of a challenge. And I think one of the things that was really encouraging this week was that there were many participants from the banking world also in the room, really looking to work collaboratively with the industry to make those investments happen.
Apart from that, then, when you reflect back on some of the conversations that took place at ADA this week, what else stood out for you?
Well, I think the main message is really just that the theme of the conference was Africa's downstream energy transition, so the way forward. And I think what really came through to me was just that the energy transition in Africa is going to look very different from how it will look in the rest of the world. I think, first of all, I mean, Africa is starting from a very different position from Europe or North America or even China when it comes to the energy transition. Emissions, Africa accounts for less than 3% of world's emissions. Millions of people still don't have sufficient access to energy. So the priority, number one, is really providing more affordable, reliable energy to consumers to enable that economic development. But obviously to do that as responsibly as possible. And I think there's certainly one eye on the long term, the need to develop an energy system that is as low emission as possible, but clearly the number one priority is getting more affordable, reliable energy to consumers as soon as possible.
From your vantage point, then, what is your outlook, or rather, how are you seeing the future when it comes to oil and gas on the continent?
Well, I think it's a positive outlook from two angles. One on the consumption side, as we've described. I think as Africa's demand for energy increases, I think oil and gas will continue to play an important role. I mean, those are the affordable, reliable sources of energy today. And yes, I think that the number one priority is getting that energy to consumers today and then supplementing it with renewables and greener fuels where that makes sense to do so. But I think the other opportunity for the continent is really on the supply side. Over the past 12 months, we've seen the narrative around the energy transition at a global level, the tone of that discussion change quite significantly. And I think we're now in talking about an energy transition in much more realistic terms. I think we've come to terms with the fact that we can only shift away from fossil fuels as quickly as the alternatives become available at a similar scale. And that's led to a realization that we're going to need oil and gas really for the foreseeable future, even as we ramp up that renewable capacity. What that means is more upstream activity is going to be required, and I think that's good news for the continent in terms of the development of some of the world-class discoveries that we've seen made here in South Africa, but also in neighboring countries in Namibia, Mozambique, and across the continent.